So I would like to introduce our panelists today. We have Ellie Grossman, who is the program director at the Autism Society of Northwest Pennsylvania, and she will be answering any questions in the chat, so feel free to use that. She is also a certified recreational therapist. And our guest speaker today is Tish Bartlett. She is the executive director of the Autism Society of Northwest Pennsylvania. She has been with the company for 15 years and is autism certified. She is also the mother of a 20-year-old with autism who is working in the manufacturing field. So, Tish, please take it away.
Thank you. Hi, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to be talking about Autism 101, embracing neurodiversity in the workplace. So to begin, the Autism Society is a local nonprofit. We've been around for over 25 years, and we provide all of our supports to individuals and families utilizing 100% fundraising dollars. We offer therapeutic programs, family support, and community education. So we're dedicated to empowering individuals with autism as we shape an inclusive world. Our mission is to create connections, empowering everyone in the autism community with the resources needed to live fully. And our vision is to create a world where everyone in the autism community is connected to the support they need when they need it. So what is autism? Many of you probably have already had experience, either a family member, a friend, a coworker's child, or neighbor. Well, autism's official definition is a developmental disorder of neurological origin that affects often severely a person's ability to communicate and socially interact with others. And you're going to see those abilities will vary significantly. They diagnose autism as an autism spectrum disorder with different levels. We have level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 are our highest functioning individuals. They're going to need the skills to live as independently as possible, whereas our level 3 individuals are more profoundly affected and may or may not be verbal and will need a lifetime of supports and assistance, but also have the right and the ability to do some sort of work to contribute to their home environment as well as community. The characteristics and behaviors of autism, they may be apparent in infancy, but usually become obvious during the early childhood months, 24 to 6 years. Currently, the average diagnosed age is around 5, which, to us working in the field, that is late. You really want them diagnosed maybe around 3, 3.5, because early intervention is really key to better outcomes. Autism affects individuals in every country and region of the world. It has no boundaries. It does not care of your economic background, your racial or ethnic origins. Autism can affect anyone, anywhere. So autism is a lifetime disability. This means that if you're diagnosed at 3, you will be a 50-year-old with autism. And then the number and intensity of symptoms are going to vary widely amongst individuals. However, autism demonstrates impairments in 3 core areas: communication, social relationships, and restricted patterns of behavior, often focused on strong interest, overly focused on strong interest. According to the CDC, currently, 1 in 36 children are affected with autism. That's about 1% of the world population. And over the next 5 years, we're going to see about 500,000 individuals transitioning into adulthood with autism. These are going to be the future employees, your coworkers, your neighbors. These adults are going to be, some of them are going to need to be independent and supporting themselves, as there's just not enough resources. Autism is the fastest growing developmental disability in the US. And again, There is no boundaries for racial, ethnic, or socioeconomic backgrounds. And there is also, to this date, no known cure or cause for autism. I know there's a lot of things that you'll read out on social media of saying, you know, there's been a new study that Tylenol caused autism, or older moms, or obesity, but there is nothing that has been proven to be a scientific cause of autism. So when individuals with autism have different skills and abilities, they typically experience challenges in these areas. We're going to see challenges in communicating with others. That could be verbal or nonverbal communication. Some may not speak at all. We consider them nonverbal or non-communicative. Some may speak only using 1 or 2 word phrases, very limited speech. They might be able to communicate their needs or wants, but be unable to engage in a back and forth conversation. And we say some can engage in conversations, but may have a difficulty time talking about a range of topics. They might be comfortable only talking about things of interest for them. Whereas if you're asking them about the weather, you might get 1 or 2 word responses, if any response. But if their interest is in Corvettes and you talk about Corvettes, you will have a long lasting conversation, longer than you ever wanted, and learn about Corvettes. Difficulty understanding language and reasoning, challenges in socializing and developing friendships, and challenging behavior. The one thing I'm going to say, a little caveat with challenging behavior, behavior is communication. There is a reason behind the behavior. And the key to success is to figure out what that cause is, what the reason is, so you can adapt, find tools to avoid or de-stressors to help the anxiety be less, so those challenging behaviors can be fewer and fewer. So are you ready to become engaged in hiring and retaining employees with autism? You're going to tap into a rich talent pool. We talk about that, why hire somebody? And this is from 2 business leaders in Minnesota. They said that they're loyal. They're very loyal and highly productive. They're focused at the job at task. They want to get in there. They want to keep their head down and get their work done. Able to think outside of the box. They can be fast problem solvers. A lot of times they're going to come up with a new approach to how something's been done. Creative and innovative. I see this with my son. He actually comes to the Autism Society, and he can come up with creative and innovative ways of how we can solve or troubleshoot some of our problems here. Detailed oriented, extremely detailed oriented, sometimes to the nth degree. A lot of times you're going to see individuals with autism will also have OCD, where they have to have things orderly, and that really works in that detailed oriented manner. And task oriented. You're going to see individuals that they are more comfortable with repetitive tasks. They understand, they have that list to do, and they're comfortable keep repeating over and over. They know what to expect, and that makes them comfortable. So the workforce continues to experience major barriers to inclusive employment. And why do we say this? Well, 90% of adults with autism are unemployed or underemployed. Up to 85% of autistic adults with college degrees remain unemployed. And our major factors that contribute to these statistics are wrongly assumed expectations, unfair labor practices, and being unable to advocate for oneself. And I will tell you, one of the biggest hurdles to some of our individuals is how to approach applying for the job and getting through that job interview. They don't present as the way they're expected. A job interview candidate is expected. And so sometimes it's wrongly assumed that they don't have the skills to complete the task. And of course, unfair labor practices. The unknown is scary for the employer. And if they're not familiar with working with someone with autism, it might fall under unfair, not willingly, but because of that fear of not knowing how to handle this person and not knowing what to do with outbursts or behaviors that may or may not occur in the workplace. A person with autism can become a valued, if not an outstanding employee. So we're here to work with our local community, our local employers, to help overcome some of these wrongly assumed expectations and to give the tools that you need in order to employ an individual with autism successfully. So what are the benefits of hiring somebody with autism? You're going to see a reduced turnover and reduced recruitment costs. When you hire an individual with autism, they're in this for the longevity. They're happy when they find that job that they feel comfortable and safe. They're not out looking for the better job. They want to stay where it's comfortable and where they know the expectations. You're going to increase the pool of talent from which companies can recruit. 1 in 36 individuals are affected with autism. That is a huge part of our population. When we say 500,000 adults, those are a lot of potential employees. Demonstrate high levels of performance, productivity, and loyalty, which in turn helps build stronger employee engagement overall. They're going to be committed to your job. If they're comfortable and they're welcomed, they're going to be committed to your company. I have an example is we have a young man, he's 20, and he works for Chick-fil-A. He serves your food. I'm not sure what the job is called, but when you order at Chick-fil-A, you go and you sit down with a number, and then this young man comes with a smile and brings you your tray of food. Personally, I think he should be on the marketing payroll for Chick-fil-A because he's out in the community promoting it. He tells all of us, you must come see me at Chick-fil-A. Come to Chick-fil-A. It has the best chicken. I personally don't like chicken, so after he got over the fact that he thinks I'm weird for not liking chicken, he told me to come for the macaroni and cheese because it's the best macaroni and cheese in town. So he is committed and dedicated to that job, and he spreads that news widely. Contribute significantly to innovating company processes and products. We took a group from our teen club to volunteer at the Second Harvest Food Bank. They were packing shut-in seniors food boxes. And the volunteer coordinator, no offense to him, at the Second Harvest Food Bank had everything lined up. Our young adults came in and started packing the boxes and went, whoa, this is not efficient. You have to remove stuff to put new stuff in. So they got together. I made them ask if it was appropriate that they rearrange the setup, and the volunteer coordinator agreed. They rearranged the packing assembly line. They had everybody pick a spot, and they took over the process, and it was quicker. They finished in half the time that was estimated to pack the number of boxes that they were assigned, and they enjoyed it. Offers attract employees returns on employee investment because people are going to be committed to your company where they see that you are employing individuals with autism. I will tell you a recent experience. We were at a festival where we were volunteering. We learned that the moonshine tent was founded by an individual with autism, and it was his moonshine. I think all of my volunteers went and purchased moonshine, whether they drank it or not, because they wanted to invest in the fact that an individual with autism ran this company and was making the moonshine. And then the workplace becomes more diverse, and the benefits from the perspective that individuals with disabilities offer as both an employee and to customers. So I kind of touched on that as, we find out, I will be honest, I hear it all the time where they say, hey, did you see that Wegmans has somebody working in the bakery with autism, or CVS has a program for pharmacy techs for individuals with autism. It really shows your companies will be respected in the community for giving those individuals an opportunity. Some of the social challenges you may notice, challenges in developing and maintaining relationships and friendships. I will tell you, it's not that they don't want the friendships, they just don't know how to make that engagement. It is so hard. I see this with my son. He's 20 years old. He's been a part of the Autism Society since he was 5. He has friends here that he knows them well, but he still has a huge challenge in picking up the phone and calling somebody or texting him or texting them. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know small talk. He said, I don't know what to tell them. So all of his phone calls have to have a purpose of I'm meeting you at this date and time versus just saying, hey, how are you doing? So small talk within the office will be very challenging and can be misinterpreted that they're being rude or unfriendly when it's not that case at all. It's because they don't know how or what to say. Might have a hard time relating to others, taking another's perspective, and displaying emotions. They don't always, their face doesn't always read what they're feeling and what they mean. They could be truly upset, but have the biggest smile on their face. We have that with several of our team clubbers here. They have a huge smile on their face, even though it was their worst day in their life. Or they may not be able to show the joy. Maybe a coworker just returned from having a baby and they're very excited. And this individual is like, yeah, okay, we have to get to work. They just don't know how to display those emotions. I talked about this, may be difficult to share enjoyment and interest with others. May not show anticipatory behaviors. You give them, maybe you walk up to the individual and you're like, oh yes, you've been such a hard worker, we're going to give you a raise. And you expect the person to answer with, oh, that's wonderful, thank you, I'm so appreciative. And their answer might be, okay, I have to get back to work, because they're focused on the work. And so they're probably not going to show you the reaction that you're anticipating. But I can tell you that does not mean they're not thankful and excited. They just don't have that outward ability to show that emotion. And may not share joint attention. They kind of have that one-track mind. When they're at work, their focus is on work and on the project they're working at. They're probably not going to want to know about your weekend. They're probably not going to be chit-chatting about a concert you went to, because when they're in those walls from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, their focus is, my job is quality control, and this is what I need to talk about and what I need to do. So they're not going to share the joint attention. For the supervisor or the boss, that's a good thing, because they're going to be the ones staying on task and finishing the job in a timely manner. So please, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. And if it's something we need to cover, Allie will speak out and we can answer it actively during the presentation. Communication. Communication is definitely a hurdle for individuals, no matter what level they are on the spectrum, level 1, 2, or 3. All of them can have different challenges in their communication. I will tell you, even the highest communicative ones have a delayed response time. We talk about it. Allie always shares when she participates actively, that 10-second delay. Count in your head, give them 10 seconds to respond. Let them process what you have said, what you've asked of them, and so they can formulate their response. Acting as if they cannot hear or appear to not hear what you are saying, they might be looking somewhere else. I know many of our individuals have to have multi-sensory input in order to focus. My son currently works this summer. He does quality control at a local machine shop in Waterford. And when he is doing specs on the rework table, is what he calls it, he watches history shows on YouTube, because he needs that input. He needs that noise from his YouTube history. He's not watching it, I should say, he's listening to it while he does the rework, and that helps him to stay focused. And we're very blessed that his supervisor understands that. Echolalia, repeating what they hear. So sometimes this can be good, sometimes it cannot be good. It is amazing how they can repeat quotes from a movie that fits actively in a conversation. I have had entire conversations with individuals that later I've been told, oh, you were just talking about Toy Story. And I'm like, whew, I had no idea. So a lot of times they can use quote from movies to fit into their active daily conversations. Nonverbal, we say nonverbal is they're not able to communicate in the traditional manner that we understand. That does not mean they are intellectually disabled. They could be nonverbal and still be intellectually advanced. I always share it with Allie has a 23-year-old brother who is nonverbal, but he reads at a higher level than my son, who is verbal and level 1 autism. Her brother can read better than my child. He's an active ability to read. And so just because he is nonverbal does not mean that he's intellectually behind. A lot of times that is assumed. And there are many, many alternative ways to provide communication, whether that is a PEC system or a speech device. There are other means to allow that person to speak. Just when you have somebody that is deaf and can't, and they use sign language, we have other means such as speech devices or PEC system, which is a picture system. Inability to understand idioms or slang. We have a lot of slang we use, idioms, raining cats and dogs, all these things. They don't understand that. They're very black and white logical thinkers. So that can be confusing for them in a situation. Receptive or expressive speech issues. So receptive speech is what we hear and expressive speech is what we say. So it could be very different. If there could be a nonverbal individual, which means their expressive speech is, not equal to their age level or non-existent. However, their receptive speech could be at the highest level, where if you're talking in front of them, they can hear you and understand and comprehend what you are saying. So we always say is give them the respect. Even if they cannot answer you in the typical manner, give them the respect to speak directly to them. They may have a speech device, or maybe they have an adult with them that can translate for them of what they're saying. Maybe they understand their gestures and they can verbally respond for them. But please be respectful of the fact that they can understand you. And sometimes we have individuals that don't realize that and could say some hurtful items. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And vice versa, you can have an individual that has a college level vocabulary, that receptive speech is very delayed, but can only comprehend on the elementary level. That happens a lot with autism. Those two items act independently and can be at various developments. Difficulty with back and forth conversations. We talked about this on a prior screen, where they're going to have a hard time talking about average things unless it is something that they truly enjoy and have an interest in. They're really not going to want to have a back and forth conversation. It can be challenging for them. Challenges in using and interpreting non-verbal behavior. We talk about eye glazes, body language, gestures. That isn't something that they read into. They're not going to get those facial expressions. Limited or lacking facial expressions or over exaggerating. You can't always tell what they're feeling inside by how their face looks. I talked about some of them always having a smile, even if it's the worst day of their life. Or where in my instance, my son is never smiling. He always looks like Eeyore, but he could be very happy. His face just never changes. He has a very monotone type voice, body action. We joke he's a sloth. He moves very, very slow. Even when he's excited and happy and doing one of his favorite things, he is very, very slow and monotone face. Might avoid looking at people. Many, many years ago, they would do ABA drills where they would say eye contact and insist that the individual is not looking at you, not making eye contact, they're not understanding you. Well, that philosophy has since changed in realizing that eye contact is very hard and sometimes painful for individuals with autism. You're really looking into their soul, you're glaring at them. So it bothers them when you're making direct eye contact as well as them making it with you. They just prefer not to do it. So we talk about how whole body listening is more important. You can tell, it's always hard on a Zoom, but you can tell that an individual is looking and paying attention by how their body is facing you. My eyes may be wandering past your shoulder, looking at a clock at the wall, looking at a pattern on the floor, but you can tell that they're listening by how their whole body is, and they're not with their back to you walking away. And that is more effective than worrying about that direct eye contact. We have Dr. Temple Grandin, who is an individual with autism. She's probably in her 70s now, world renowned, speaking out of how individuals think in pictures, and talked about the eye contact, that when you tell her that, she has to sit with her head constantly saying to herself, eye contact, eye contact, eye contact. Well, while she's doing that, she can't hear or process anything going on around her. So when she leaves the conversation, the only thing she knows that happened was eye contact. So it's more important that they hear what is happening versus having that direct eye contact. So you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism is a famous statement now, because it's said a lot, by Dr. Stephen Shore, who's an adult who lives with autism, and he's also a professor. And he's always said that each person with autism is unique. Autism is a spectrum disorder, and it looks different in every person. Of 15 years, I have never seen two people alike with autism. Their skills vary, just like all of us neurotypical individuals. We're all very unique in ourselves. It's difficult to determine someone has autism by looking at them. There is no outward appearance to say they have autism. Many times when my son was younger, other parents would come up and tell me, well, he doesn't look like autism. And I have to say, well, I'm sorry, we left that at home today, but they look like everyone else. It goes back to the thing of don't judge a book by its cover. And each individual with autism is unique, talented, and wonderful in their own way. They all have something that they bring to the table, just like all of us. Everybody has their own talents. But I will say, every person with autism is unique and talented, but that does not mean every person with autism is a savant. And we have heard that especially from the Rain Man movie. Hopefully all of you know what that reference is. That yes, some of them are savants and amazing with maybe a musical talent or the ability to recite or count cards, different things, but not every individual with autism automatically has that savant skill. And verbal ability has no bearing on intellectual ability. Just because they can't verbally communicate with our typical language does not mean that they are intellectually disabled. I spoke to a mom in the last few months. Her son is nonverbal, but he has taught himself through his speech device 5 different languages. So he can't communicate like we are right now, but he knows 5 languages, and he can type on a speech device in 5 different languages. We say differences, not deficits. Everyone everywhere has unique life experiences, gifts, talents, and interests. So given the intelligence, tenacity, drive, an ingenious way that people with autism compensate for their unique challenges, they are arguably less a disorder, more of an information processing difference in the brain. So they process the information that comes in differently than what we would identify as the neurotypical brain. So we say all people do better in life when they can play to their strengths. You know, we all have different strengths and abilities. My weakness is I can't measure to save my life. Don't give me the smart end of the measuring tape, because I can guarantee you the building will be crooked if we all go off what I said. So that is not a strength of mine. Savvy employers know that matching the right person to the right job is a win-win. So we have to figure out what are their strengths and where will they be best fitted inside the company. The first step is to become informed about autism. So you know what some of the expectations are, what are some of the ideas, what are some of the challenges they may have in your workplace. And when the employees with autism are supported on the job, the challenges, they do not need to be barriers. It was stated by an advocate, we can help them become taxpayers and not tax consumers with some very small changes that do not cost a lot of money. Developmental difference. So it says that autism spectrum it's complex. We understand that, especially when no two people are alike, and you may have this plan, you hired somebody with autism, you made a few little accommodations, everything was great. So you hire somebody else, and then none of those accommodations worked for this individual, so you feel like you're starting from ground zero. I won't lie, that it can very well happen. So a researcher at Yale University believes the typical developing infant becomes experts on people. So their brain is set up to recognize faces. And we see that if we've been around infants recently, you see that they recognize, they have facial recognition. But a person with autism becomes an expert on objects. And Temple Grandin talked about this a lot in her books, and how individuals with autism see in pictures. So they look at it as experts on objects. And a lot of times you'll hear this, it's called facial blindness. They don't recognize the person, but they can walk into a room that maybe they visited 6 months ago, and they can tell you everything that's been moved or changed. They have that expert on objects ability. So their difficulties are in the social arena more. Working through the challenge. An employee with autism may lack insight into what's happening around them in the workplace and may appear insensitive. So this can be some of the co-worker challenges, because they may come across as maybe abrupt, angry, rude, or appear that they're insensitive to their coworkers. And this is why that we need to educate and know what the work environment is. It's important to understand that an employee with autism may not realize what's being asked and may misinterpret the actions of others. So if an employee performs a task incorrectly, tell the employee what you want them to do by breaking the process into steps or tasks, giving them a time to process each before going on to the next. So you may not break it down. You may not be able to give them the instructions to the project all at one time. You might need to have it broken down into smaller steps. Focus on the correct procedure rather than on what they're doing wrong. Positive support always work best. So instead of rehashing how they did the project wrong, is go back and talk about how it should have been done, the appropriate way to do it. Many workers with autism appear to be insensitive or aloof in challenging situations, but in reality, the worker knows that you're upset, angry, or disappointed. But that can be very difficult for them to comprehend, and it might appear that they lack empathy or to react inappropriate. It's because they're not sure. They're not sure how to show those feelings, and they're definitely not going to show those feelings in a workplace. Truthfully, the individuals with autism, the only one that gets to see their innermost feelings or they'll share with is the person that's closest to them. That might be mom, dad, grandma, brother, sister. They'll have that one person that they feel confident in, that they can entrust to share what truly happened and how their feelings are. Sometimes employees with autism do not realize when things are not going well. They lack insight and may be unable to determine the importance of an event or to understand the thoughts of others. These employees are often unaware that they're in trouble. Clear communication can negate this challenge. So we just had this recently, actually here at the Autism Society with my son. He was hyper focused on a task that needed to be done, but it wasn't something that had to be done immediately. I had another project that was more timely, and he had a really hard time shifting his focus. He could not understand why the original task would have been stopped while we started a new project. So we had to take the time and clearly explain why we're shifting. This, the second job we didn't know we were going to need right away. It was kind of an emergency project. And it just took time to explain that and to allow him to process it in order to move on. And truthfully, for a little bit, he was getting elevated because he didn't feel like I could understand why he was so hyper focused. So there can be breakdown in communications. Even, I've lived with him for 20 years. I can even have sometimes challenging in communicating and trying to get through why something needs to change. And you have to step back and give it that time to process. Individuals with autism are easily bullied in the workplace because they don't understand manipulation or deceit. They can be easily set up and exploited by coworkers. Mentors can really help the worker and with autism understand the office politics and culture. So I actually have another example of this, unfortunately, with my son in the machine shop. I truly don't think it was an individual trying to be deceitful, but it was an individual trying to take advantage of my son. The other worker did not have a car. My son does have a car. So, and my son is also, well, he's 20, so he is underage for drinking. And he kept asking my son to first to borrow money from him, and then next have him take him grocery shopping and have him take him to the beer distributor. And this was becoming a daily occurrence to pick him up for work, take him home from work, run his errands with him, to the point that this individual, I think, was 20 years older than my son, to the point that my child finally came to me and said he was feeling uncomfortable. So I was very thankful that I talked to Garrett and we role played, and he was able to go to his supervisor and tell him how he was feeling, and they did step in and put an end to this. So he was being taken advantage of by another worker, and it was a very hard situation for me, because your first thing you want to do as a mom is to come in and say, whoa, stop taking advantage of my child. He's not going to be doing your errands. He's not going to be giving you money. And you can't, because they are adults, and you just have to teach them and help them process and give them a clear person that they can go and speak to, somebody that can explain the situation and help fix it. They coached Garrett. Instead of just intervening, they coached Garrett to go up to this gentleman and tell him, no, I'm not going to drive you anymore. So Garrett was able to personally resolve this without the supervisor doing the talking for him. People with autism sometimes are very sensitive to certain sensory stimuli. It could be bright lights, sounds, smells, noise. It can trigger behaviors that may not be appropriate in the workplace, but these situations can be avoided if you're aware of these triggers and make adjustments to minimize them. It might be that they just can't have the overhead lights on in their office, or maybe their overhead lights need magnetic screen covers on them to dim them. Maybe they are able to wear headphones because the machine floor is too loud. Not noise canceling headphones, because they still need to be able to hear something for safety. But maybe they can have headphones that can reduce some of the sounds on the machine floor. Maybe they need to get their own personal safety glasses, ones that they find more comfortable than the standard ones being handed out. So all of these things, what I had to do is, my son, he wants to wear, the employee issued t-shirts. He cannot wear them. They're scratchy. So we worked with the company that I was able to get him soft style t-shirts, and then we put the logo on it for him, so he still has the uniform, but he has one more comfortable than the scratchy t-shirts that they were handing out. So why accommodations as needed? The first thing and foremost I will say is not every accommodation needs to be made for every single employee with autism. So be open, though, to listening to requests and if they're able to be accommodated. I know because of safety reasons in a machine shop or in a manufacturing association, you may not always be able to provide the accommodation, but you can talk through it and see what you can do so everyone is safe. So finding out what best works, work to their strengths will create a more smoothly running organization. So accommodation needed by employees with autism, it can vary significantly. Just like each person has a personality, temperament, and experience, abilities that make them one of a kind. Often major changes make a big difference. So it could be that the person doesn't want their overhead lights on and they just want a lamp on their desk. Surprisingly, we have a board member here that shared with me, she is an adult with autism, and at her last company, they would not allow her to keep her office lights on and have a lamp on her desk. They said it wasn't fair to all the other employees, which kind of shocked me. But now in her new job, she keeps her lights off and she has a lamp on her desk, and she's more comfortable, which makes her more productive in her job. So it's perceptual differences. Work to view an autism as a different ability rather than a disability. Individuals with autism, their perception, behaviors, and learning are different. So these differences are sometimes viewed by others in negative terms as deficits, since social expertise follows a different pathway than the general population. So they talked about this extensive research that was done at Cambridge University by an individual that is way higher educated than myself, but they went and understand the differences in the development on a psychological level of how the brain works differently. So the autism brain, we say the theory of mind. The theory of mind is the ability to understand another person's needs, wants, and attentions. Well, a person with autism is less intuitive in understanding of others' true intentions. So they lack that ability to understand another person's needs, wants, and intentions. They're less able to quickly understand another person's body language, gestures, voice tones, or to use context to more easily inform social meaning. So they struggle with that ability to understand. So their theory of mind does not work like the neurotypical brain. Weak central coherence theory, that is seeing the bigger picture. Overall, seeing when you're a part of a team, it's very important to see the bigger picture of why every part of this is important for the overall part of the job. Individuals with autism do not easily integrate information into context to see that bigger picture. They're going to be hyper-focused on their part of the project, and to them, that is going to be the most important part of the project. Problematic in some situations, as it can lead to misconceptions or misunderstanding, especially when communication is not clear. So in order to help them see that bigger picture, it really has to be communicated clearly. Executive function theory, the ability to plan and organize. And I will be honest with you, 100%, me as a mom with an individual with autism, executive function is my biggest hurdle with him. Decision making, planning, the organizing I don't really have. He organizes physically, but in his mind, the organization doesn't work in his mind. He can't organize his steps to get started on a project. So having difficulty holding more than one mental image in mind in order to plan, problem solve, or self-regulate, That is a huge hurdle. And I will truly say every other autism mom also struggles in this area. More challenges for individuals with autism to organize or initiate plans. They can be paralyzed in making a decision or to moving forward to what the first step is. However, some learn to compensate and to become highly organized. They understand, they're well aware of this challenge, and some of them over-organize in order to compensate for this deficit. They really like those lists of to-do things. When I want my son to do things at home, I put a list on the kitchen counter, and I can guarantee everything on that list will be done well, and will be done, if I put a time on it, will be done by that time. My older neurotypical son, I could put a list on the kitchen counter and beg the rest of the day for it to be completed, and it wouldn't get complete. But as long as you have that organization help for them, the individual with autism is going to do the task, they're going to do it well, and they're going to get it done. So the gift of autism is singular ability to focus, loyalty, and efficiency, addresses many employers' needs. So individuals with autism are creative, they're focused, and they're singular in their pursuit of excellence dominates the landscape of innovation and productivity. So they're happy in their job. They're comfortable in those jobs. They're okay with repetitive tasks because they know what to expect and they know what to do. That really helps with that executive functioning problem. Getting started, a new project can be overwhelming and challenging, and they might need help breaking it down. But once they've done it a few times, they're comfortable with that. Some history's creative geniuses were likely and are living somewhere on the autism spectrum. And then we talked about it, it can be a gift to have that singular focus. We have a hotel here in Erie that hired an individual with autism to come in on the weekends, and that's during their busy season, that's their biggest turnover, like on Sundays when individuals check out. He comes in and he strips all the linen from the rooms, the towels, the bedding, takes the bedding off. So then the housekeeping staff, all they have to do is come through and remake the beds. He loves his job. He feels fulfilled by this job, and they're saving their housekeeping staff hours in turning over these rooms in order for their next guest to check in. So just a little thing like that gave this individual a job that he feels like he's a contributing member of the community, and it was the benefit to the hotel. Gifts and talents. Many individuals share an array of traits, characteristics, gifts, and talents that can be and often are an immense value to our employers. So we talk about problem solving. They typically possess a sharp intelligence, and many have exceptional memories. My child, unfortunately, his memory is everything they've ever done wrong as a mom, and he remembers it. Whether it was yesterday or 15 years ago, he likes to remind me of what I did, and he can quote it as if it happened yesterday. They might have highly developed talents and are originally approached to solving problems. They may come up with a unique idea of something that you've done over and over again for the last 20 years, but they have a new innovative idea, maybe an app or a program, something that you didn't know would work to help make things more efficient. Trustworthiness and dependability. Individuals with autism have no hidden agendas. There are no interest in harming or taking advantage of others. They tend to be loyal and honest in their relationships. You see what you get. That's who they are. They wear their heart on the sleeve, and they are not going to try to lie and manipulate. Honestly, they always say individuals with autism do not lie. I will say I have seen some of them lie, but it's usually just to save themselves, not to hurt another individual. Freedom from prejudice. People with autism accept the quirks and idiosyncrasies of others. They do not usually discriminate, but judge people based on their behavior. They do not recognize hierarchies. They're not going to be in the gossip of the office. They're not going to be in the drama. They take people for who they are. Who's nice to them, they like them. That's how it is. As long as you're kind to them, then they consider you a friend. Work ethic. People with autism take their jobs seriously. They pay attention to details. They remember the details. They're going to be committed. They're going to be coming to work on time. If they're not, they're going to tell you the 1,000 reasons that cause them to not be to work on time. They're going to be following what the rules are. If I call my son right now, he won't answer the phone because you're not to answer your phone on the shop floor. But then he'll call me back on his break to say, Mom, I was on the shop floor. You can't use your phone on the shop floor. I'm like, okay, I understand. Integrity. Employees with autism do not follow the crowd. In fact, if they know that something's wrong, they stick to their position. Even in the face of intense social pressure, their values are not shaped by financial, social, or political influences. They follow what they believe. And if you have a set of rules that are known in the office, maybe they're posted on the wall or they're shared on the first day of hire or during orientation, they are going to enforce those rules and they are going to speak out when others do not. We always say in elementary school, moms with kids with autism learn very quick that their kids are the little police officer of the school, telling on their classmates for not following all the rules that were taught to them on the first day of school. Perseveration. Repetitive, routine, and endurance are not boring to individuals with autism. In fact, their single-minded focus helps them complete tasks and enjoy their work. That is a comfort level for them. They're okay with doing that same task day in and day out, and they are going to remember to do it. One of the new tasks that my son has at the machine shop is they need to read the numbers off the CNC machines every day, what the count was when they started work and what the count was when they ended work on, I don't know, like 40 machines. Well, this kept getting forgotten. So they had the brilliant idea, all right, we'll have Garrett do this job. So every day now, Garrett comes in and he reads these numbers, and then every day he'll come home, like 10 minutes late, and he'll say, I had to wait till the machines finished the run so I could read the numbers. He is never going to forget that those numbers need to be done. So now they have an accurate count while he's been there of the beginning numbers and the end numbers. Process thinkers and visual thinkers. People with autism can quickly see details that others don't, often visualizing a quick solution by seeing what is and what it needs to be. It goes back to like they think in pictures. They can visually see the whole thing play out. It's actually amazing when you take the time and you sit down and you talk to someone on the spectrum and you have a project that you're working on with them of how they process it and they can visually see it. I cannot do that in my head. So it's very interesting and impressive for me when I see that. Getting the best from an employee with autism. So some of the things that you can really focus on to help it to be a successful relationship is be precise and specific about job instructions. Slang and figures of speech may not convey what you want to communicate. Details and examples help. Show them. Some of them are visual. Show them what needs to be done. Be right there and walk them through the task. Break down those tasks. My son went to Erie, the VOTEC school for precision machining, and his teacher shared at the National Tech Honor Society induction that for years, he'd been teaching there for 10 years, and so he had all his project instructions written out until Garrett joined his class. And I realized that he didn't have enough detail in his instructions. So he was rewriting them while Garrett was his student. And he said he would be so proud that night. He'd go, I got everything. Yep, this is good. And then he'd hand it to Garrett the next day. And after 100 questions, he would be like, okay, back to the drawing board. Because Garrett is very precise about the job instructions. So he would point out all of the things that the teacher thought was an automatic given of what you should do, and Garrett needed that in those instructions. So he helped him learn to be more precise. Be specific about what is rigid and what is flexible. Explain which task must always be performed in the prescribed manner, that they cannot vary from the instructions given. And then allow the employee with autism to create other pathways when there's flexibility in the task. So you need to clearly identify and say, this, we're asking you to do A, B, C, and this must be followed for safety, regulations, whatever that might be. But on this other project, you know, this is what you start with and this is what you end with, and you are welcome to find the best path to finish that. That, of course, is going to depend on the individual and what level of they are, or if it's just a repetitive task. Make a logical list of steps for the task. They like to make sense out of things, supply the logic behind necessary steps for routine tasks, and they are more likely to become automatic for them. Filling in what's missing. You've done your best to describe the job accurately, simply, and logically, but some things will be overlooked until the employee is on the job. So be alert to these. It happens. Alert to these gaps. We all do this. We all think that some things are just automatic, or we've done it for so long that we forget a step. Be willing to fill in what's missing, adding to the written instructions whenever possible. So be flexible to add more detail. Transfer responsibilities gradually. It's effective and it will ease employees with autism into their jobs by offering support as needed. As the employee becomes adjusted and comfortable, gradually decrease your support and increase their responsibilities. It's not, do not throw them into the deep end. That is not a successful transition, probably, you know, for any employee, although we've all probably been in that situation, that it has happened. But work through them, you know, break down the task and add a little at a time. And as they become more comfortable, they'll be willing to take on more responsibility. Try to give advance notice of change. If a schedule or routine change will affect an employee with autism, allow time and plan on reinforcing the change with encouraging feedback. I have a sad story about this with a young man who is nonverbal. He was working, actually it was another machine shop. He was working there and they were planning a renovation. And he was doing, you know, a repetitive task that he truly enjoyed. He loved going to work every day, but nobody thought to tell him they were going to close down his machine shop while they did a renovation. It just wasn't something that was addressed. It wasn't on purpose. It was just an oversight. So he came in one day and they said, oh, nope, your job isn't going to be available. You're going to go over here and we'll find other things for you to do. So nothing specific. They were going to keep him on, which was wonderful, but they didn't really know what he was going to do. And it was kind of going to be a task here and there. Well, this individual was probably level 2 autism, you know, not really communicative, limited communication, very, very high need for structure. This turned him in a tailspin. Every day, when will my job be back? When will my job be back? When will my job? Well, we've all worked with construction, and honestly, they could not give him a defined deadline. They couldn't answer his questions, or didn't know what to do, or unwilling. I am not clear on that. And eventually they ended up firing him because everyone got tired of hearing, when will I have my job back? That could have been handled a lot differently with advance notice and prepping, and letting him know that there was going to be a change in his position. Encourage a collaborative culture. Co-workers help each other. An employee with autism brings strengths that will be an asset to the team. Encourage team members to apply their own gifts when offering help to a colleague with autism. Relationships thrive in a collaborative environment. So be open as long as the employee with autism gives you permission to share. If that individual does not, then you cannot share their diagnosis. But if they do, encourage the coworkers to work with them. And if it's not, encourage your coworkers to accept everybody's differences so it can be a collaborative work environment. Be receptive to requests for accommodations. People with autism or any disability should be encouraged to speak up and ask for what they need. Some employees with autism may feel uncomfortable about disclosing their disability, a fear of losing their job or being stigmatized on the job. Unfortunately, that has happened and can happen, and that's what we're really trying to change the future to an inclusive environment so they are comfortable stating that they have a disability and that they need a slight accommodation. Be sensitive to their need and encourage conversation about what works well and what would help to improve their comfort and efficiency. And many times, the individual may already have the tool they need. Maybe it's a desk job and they have a special chair that they have from home, and they're willing to bring that in if you're allowing to accommodate that. Or, maybe they have headphones that help drown out some of the crosstalk if they're in cubicles. Be willing to consider it and listen to it. Provide regular feedback and evaluation. Schedule sessions, provide notice, and create an agenda if possible. Be positive at the start of these sessions and offer very specific examples of a job well done. The employee probably is very aware of shortcomings and weaknesses in their skills, so there's no need to be anything but direct for them. Be honest and direct in how they can improve their job. Go ahead and be blunt. Rude, no, but blunt, yes. It can be very helpful. Be direct and more easily understood. Remember, with people with autism, take what you say literally. So be simple and straightforward in what you can say to help avoid any confusion, and be clear in what the expectations are and how they can improve that job performance. If they're not doing something right, then let them know directly of how they should be doing the job. They may have misunderstood and are not deliberately doing the job incorrectly. On the job supports, we have there's no simple solution for accommodating people with autism. I wish there was that magic list I could give you, but since they're all so unique and different, there's no one challenge, no one accommodation that might be necessary for all individuals. So we say that maybe they need some help with their social and communication skills, organization skills, sensory challenges. Those are some of the areas. Universal design refers to the ideas meant to produce goods and environments that are naturally accessible to all people of all abilities. They have universal design in education as well in the workplace. Many accommodations for individuals with autism can also assist their coworkers and that do not have an autism diagnosis to be more productive in the work environment. I recently went and did a check presentation at a local company, and I was really surprised as well as impressed. Every one of the individual office spaces were not using the overhead lights anymore. They all had lamps and string lights in their office, and they said that one person started it, and then it became everyone felt like that was a more warm and welcoming environment. So all of the 20 offices they had there were not using the overhead lights, and it made all their workers, all their employees more comfortable. So help the new employee with autism identify a coworker who can act as a mentor for the person. This would be their go-to person when they need clarification. The mentor can also fill them in on unwritten rules in the workplace, kind of give them the ins and outs of not every rule in a workplace is written down. There's always some unwritten, just like in social rules, there's always unwritten rules. So have that person that can be their go-to. but be very strict and provide guidelines to the individual with autism that they're not going to be leaving their workstation and bothering this other person, 100 times a day. Give them time, maybe in the morning and the afternoon, that they can go to them and talk and have like a 10-minute debrief meeting, so your mentor can still get their job completed as well. An ideal employment situation for a person with autism would be to work on a team whose members are knowledgeable about the abilities and challenges of autism. A network of colleagues, mentors, superior subordinates, and allies offer a natural support system and encourages personal growth and fulfillment. So if your whole team understands autism, whether they know somebody is specifically hired with the diagnosis, they're going to be more open to the differences of all their coworkers. The first 2 weeks of work, have the supervisor schedule a 10-minute meeting with the new employee at the end of each workday. Maybe it works better to have this at the beginning of the workday. In this meeting, give feedback on what went well and what needs to change, and give the individual a chance to ask questions. In the beginning, they may not say a word. They may just say, yep, it's good, until they're comfortable and used to it, and then they can come back and share with you if they have questions or they have needs. My son had a new supervisor this summer, and the individual came up to him 6 times in one day. He obviously knew. We were very open about Garrett having autism, and the new supervisor, it must have been shared with him that Garrett had autism. And he came up to him 6 times and said, Garrett, are you okay? Garrett, are you okay? And finally, on the last one, Garrett said, please stop asking me. And I explained to him the next day that he just needs to go to the supervisor. He was trying to be helpful and just say, I can tell you if I'm not okay. And, I gave the supervisor a lot of credit. He wanted to make sure that Garrett knew he could come to him, but sometimes it could be too much, and you have to give the time for the individual to be comfortable to be able to tell you they're not okay. At least once a month, a supervisor employee with autism might want to review their work. And maybe you need to remind them of the helping a coworker when their work is done. Maybe you need to remind them of the team approach. Be open, but that's with all employees, maybe not just the individual, is the feedback. Feedback is very important. And consider diversity training for the supervisor and the team the person will be working with. Even if you're not disclosing that you're hiring somebody with autism, maybe you as the HR director, there's a person with autism coming in and joining one of your teams, but you cannot disclose that. Bring in some training. Overall diversity training is very helpful for the workplace, because it might be one person now, but then next year you might have 4 people with autism or 10 people with autism employed. So it'd be the time to start that diversity training now to get them, help them to understand the diversity of their workplace. And there's always an option to use a job coach or a social coach to set up visual aids, information notebooks, schedules. OVR locally, the Office of Vocational Rehab, can help an employer and the workers with autism develop these supports. So there are job coach options. If your company is signed up to work with OVR, then you can get individuals through OVR with some job coaching. Help your new employee acclimate and succeed. All new employees need assistance in their job, as it's a new work setting. When you're first hired, a new job is always overwhelming and can provide some anxiety to those with autism as well as those not with autism. New hires with autism are no different. Help them acclimate. Simple adjustments often cost little or nothing to provide, but are important factors in helping your employee achieve success. So you want to make sure that you clarify job expectations. Review that job description on that first day of hire. We all present the job description during the interviews and we talk about it, but you want to go back and review those expectations. Maybe you even have a chart of who's responsible for what in the workplace, so they clearly understand where their job is. People with autism, we talked about, think more concrete than most people. Assume that details of the job need to be described in a very clear and explicit language. I'll be truthful. Since I've been working here for 15 years, our original job descriptions were very straightforward, one sheet. But I think from my brain of working with so many individuals with autism, our job descriptions are like 4 or 5 pages. They're very detailed oriented. That is going to be if we hire someone with autism or we hire a neurotypical. I've just gotten used to really detailing the outline of jobs and tasks to do. Be clear about the outcomes you expect from each task, and be clear about behaviors that are expected, such as checking with a supervisor when a task is completed. Do not assume that they know this is what they're supposed to be. Very clear. This goes for both ways. Be very clear that they are to check in with the supervisor once the task is clean, but also be very clear on boundaries. So if you've established a mentor or they need to go talk to their supervisor, be very clear about boundaries. So you can set up timelines that, as your supervisor, maybe my office is open to you from 9 to 10. You can come in and ask me questions and see me from 9 to 10, but maybe as the supervisor, you need from 10 to 12 to get your paperwork done or answer your emails or whatever that might be. And you can, tell them, this is a do not disturb time. Just really be clear about those boundaries. Establish job routines and write them down. People with autism are more likely to thrive when their jobs are defined in writing. The employee can keep a 3-ring binder that contains written instructions, company policy, hours, names of staff members, and job titles, so they know who is who on the job and who they are supposed to go to. So they understand that chain of command of who is responsible for telling them when they need to work overtime, when they need to stay late. I had this example with my son. I think his employer is getting a lot of on-the-job training for autism. Another employee asked my son, he works Monday through Friday for 40 hours, but he asked my son to come in on the weekend to help him move bar stock. That would have been overtime. And I mentioned to Garrett, I said, you need to go to your supervisor. A coworker does not have authority to have you come in and work overtime. You have to check with your supervisor. Well, it turns out when he spoke to his supervisor, this said employee that asked Garrett to come in on the weekend does that to a lot of employees trying to get out of his work. And the overtime was not approved. So be very clear of who they should speak to when they're asked to do something that's out of their typical job responsibilities. Change in routine will go smoother with advanced warning. Always build an adequate time for an employee to practice any new routine. Give them time, give them a learning curve. All employees need learning curves, but sometimes an individual with autism might need a little bit longer just to get comfortable in the task. And then change in schedule. This one, I know I refer to my son a lot. This is my firsthand experience in the job world with someone with autism. Last year, they posted on a bulletin board about the company picnic being at Waldemere. They posted it on a bulletin board. What we have learned is Garrett does not read the bulletin board in the staff lunchroom. Does not read it. He went to work. They made an announcement. The shop was closing at 11 because they were all going to Waldemere. My son got very upset. First off, he does not like Waldemere or anything that causes his feet to leave the ground. So he had no intentions on going. And he got upset because he works from 8 to 4. So they had him call me and he talked to me and he's like, I can't go to Waldemere. I don't like it. I want to work, but they won't let me work because they're closing the shop. So I was thankful that they had him call me and I was able to talk him down and say, these are the plans. This is their choice. They are doing, and they were paying for everyone to go to Waldemere. I said, this is how they're thanking their employees. If you choose not to participate, that is fine, but you have to come home. You cannot stay in an unsupervised warehouse, machine shop. So he did come home, and this year, when this summer came, I immediately said to him, don't forget about the Waldemere picnic, find out when it is, and plan. Are you not working or are you going? Those are your only choices. You do not get to work, and it's the picnic, because he is adamant about, I work Monday through Friday, I must be at work. Communicate in a direct manner. Clear and uncomplicated communication is essential when working with someone with autism. Keep your language straightforward. That's what they understand. State goals and timeliness clearly and identify the steps needed to reach those goals. So let them know when you expect the project to be done. Give them the timeline of what is expected. Break down tasks and ask if they are clear to the employee. Let them review them with them and let them explain back to you. Do they truly understand what the task is? Avoid double meanings in the language. Our language can be very confusing sometimes. So really be clear in the language that you're using. Think like a reporter and give your employee the who, what, where, when, and how for tasks and deadlines. That will be helpful so they understand, who am I reporting on? What am I doing? When am I doing it? Where am I doing it? And how am I doing it? And then job assignments. Most people with autism process visually, not verbally. A unique style sometimes thought of thinking in pictures. I mentioned that earlier with Dr. Temple Grandin. She really brought a lot of attention to how thinking in pictures. It's important to have written references for employees with autism. Encourage your employee to utilize a flow chart or pictures or other visual cues to help the employee do the job well. That is a win-win accommodation. If you come to the Autism Society Family Center, Allie has gone through all our program rooms, and everything has a written instruction as well as an accompanying picture. From hand washing, pictures of how you wash your hand, to the verbal written instructions. Everything has that dual picture as well as written word. Employees with autism sometimes have difficulty starting a new project. Be prepared for that and have that ability to help them through that process if it's a brand new project. Encourage the employee to break a project into manageable steps to manage time and due dates. I truly think we all need that, because it can be very overwhelming when you have a large project due, to break it down in tasks, but that can help them get started and move along. Some workers with autism may have a difficulty in a fast-paced environment that requires quick switching between tasks. Be aware of that. I can tell you, my son, I love him, but he is a sloth, and anything fast-paced can be loud, moving, changing quickly, can be very, very overwhelming and can raise the stress and anxiety level. So be aware of that when you're placing employees in specific jobs. So people first language versus identity first language. We like to cover this so you're aware of it, especially if you're working with an individual that is very high functioning, level 1, and they have a personal preference to this, which you will run into at some point in your life. People first is your person before your disability. So that's what we use at the Autism Society. And about 15, 16 years ago, this was really the push and appropriate language where we say individuals living with autism. That is people first. But then in the last 2 to 3 years, some individuals in the autism community that are autistic, they said they wanted identity first, because autism is who they are. And they want that to describe them. They are an autistic young adult. They are an autistic young man. And so what we say in respect is, if you're unsure, ask the person how he or she would like to be described. And it's important to remember that preference can vary. Some have no preference. I'll be truthful, my son really does not have a preference, but we have some individuals in our young adult group or teen club that definitely want the identity first. So we respect that. And as they're the individual with the disability, they have every right to make that decision. So We talk about with education comes change, with change comes acceptance, and with acceptance comes investment. We believe it's important to ensure that all individuals on the autism spectrum have the opportunity to engage in meaningful work during their adult lives. Many people with autism define themselves by the job they do, not by the network they have established or by the friends they have created, and not by the material things they own or the accomplishments in life. They define themselves by the work and the skills they have. We can't allow ourselves as a society to overlook such talents just because people with autism approach life differently. So we say it's a difference, not a deficit. And we think genius innovators like Einstein, Van Gogh, Mozart, evidence suggests that they might very well have been on the spectrum of autism themselves. And they are, renowned innovators that we have all learned about. So who knows? The next individual with you that you hire with autism might be a genius innovator. We talk about real quick. Oh, should go back. Oh, I'm jumping around on my slides. For people with autism to be effective self-advocates, they need to have a safe workplace and an environment they can trust. The time is now to educate your organization and invest in the future of this talented pool of individuals. And like anyone else, people with autism are keenly aware and self-conscious when they are being ridiculed, ignored, or left to cope with confusing social situations. It's important in your workplace to eliminate these stressors to the greatest extent possible. And when conversations involving people with autism break down or spiral into confusion, a supportive coworker can help redirect and repair that conversation. They will not be off-ended and most likely will thank you for your support. The governor of the state of Minnesota from 2011 to 2019 stated, disability needs to come off the shelf, off the paperwork, and into the halls of corporate America. And I quote a couple times, I've quoted from Minnesota because I tell you, I've always wanted to be them when we grow up. They have been the lead innovators employing adults with autism and have done an outstanding job educating local employers on how to work with them. And so I've taken some of this information from their experts from Overlooked Talent created by the state of Minnesota. We are the Autism Society. We're located right here in Erie on State Street, 3308 State Street. Our phone number is on the screen. We do have a website. We have a Facebook, Instagram that we actively use. My name is Tish Bartlett. I am the executive director here. I am autism certified. And then you have Allison Grossman. She is our program director. She works directly with our families and our individuals age 3 all the way up through adulthood, from doing preschool programs. And right when they hit those preteens, age 13, she's doing life and job skills to help them live as independently as possible.
Thank you, everyone, for being on our webinar today. Tish, thank you so much for doing this and educating people on autism and in your workforce and how to hopefully hire this generation of, or this population of people. I mean, it definitely can be an asset to your company.